I found out my wife had been lying to me for months. The worst part, she wasn't hiding it. I just never asked the right questions. If you had met me a year ago, you probably would have described my life as stable. Not exciting, not impressive, but stable. I was 42, married for 15 years, one daughter, Emily, 11, who still held my hand in parking lots, but pulled away if anyone from school was nearby. We lived in a quiet suburb outside Denver. The kind of place where lawns are trimmed, packages don't go missing, and people say we should get together sometime without meaning it. My wife, Laura, worked from home, remote job, marketing, flexible hours at least that's what I told people. I worked in IT support for a mid-sized company. Not glamorous, mostly solving problems nobody thanks you for, fixing things that break because someone ignored a warning they didn't understand. I liked it though. Clear problems, clear solutions. Life felt manageable. We weren't the couple that posted pictures online, that we didn't do date nights every week, that we didn't laugh constantly or talk about dreams over wine. But we functioned. Bills got paid. Dinner got made. Weekends were for groceries, errands, maybe a movie. There's a certain comfort in that kind of life. And a certain danger too. Because when nothing is obviously wrong, you stop checking if anything is quietly breaking. Laura and I used to talk more. That's the first thing that changed. Not dramatically. Not in a way that sets off alarms. Just less. At night, we used to sit on the couch together. She'd scroll through something. I'd half watch TV. And we'd talk in between. Little things. Something Emily said at school, a weird email she got from a client, a story from my office about someone locking themselves out again. Nothing important. But that's the thing I didn't understand back then. Those small conversations, they're not small. They're maintenance. And we stopped doing maintenance. It happened gradually. She started working later into the evenings. Laptop open on the kitchen table. Headphones in. About a deadline, she'd say. At first, I didn't think much of it. Remote work is weird like that. Schedules blur. I respected it. If anything, I told myself she was being productive, driven. I even felt a little proud. My wife had her own thing. Her own space. Her own work that mattered. But then it became every night. Dinner would be quiet. Emily talking more than both of us combined. Laura nodding, smiling, but always half somewhere else. Can you pass the salt? Yeah. What time are you done tonight? Not sure. Late. Okay. That was the rhythm. Short, functional, enough to call it communication, but not enough to feel like connection. I noticed it. Of course I did. You always notice when something shifts. But noticing and acting on it are two very different things. And I had a habit of choosing comfort over curiosity. Because curiosity can lead to answers you don't want. So I told myself a story instead. She's just busy, that it's temporary. This is normal. That word again. Normal. I leaned on it like a crutch. Emily started noticing too. Kids always do. Why is mom always working? She asked me one night while brushing her teeth. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her in the mirror. She's got a lot going on right now, I said. Emily frowned slightly. She doesn't come say goodnight anymore. That one stuck. Because it was true. Laura used to tuck her in, sit on the edge of the bed, ask about her day, talk about random things that didn't matter. And then one night she stopped. Then two. Then it just became the new normal. I'm sure she will tonight, I said. Emily didn't argue. But she didn't believe me either. That was becoming a pattern. Small disappointments, quiet acceptance. The kind that doesn't explode, just accumulates. A few days later, I brought it up. Carefully. We were in the kitchen. She was typing that I was pretending to clean. You've been working a lot lately, I said. She didn't look up. Yeah, it's just a busy season. When does it slow down? Soon. That word. Soon. It's a promise without a timeline. Everything okay with work? I asked. That got her a pause. Just for a second. Then she nodded. Yeah, just more responsibility. I waited. For more. For details. For anything that made it feel real. Nothing came. So I filled the silence the way I always did. All right, I said. Just checking. She smiled at me then. Quick, polite. Thanks. And went back to typing. Conversation over. Looking back, that was the first time I felt it. Not suspicion. Distance. Like I was standing just outside of something I used to be part of. But instead of stepping closer, I stepped back. Because stepping closer would mean asking better questions. And better questions don't always lead to comfortable answers. Weeks passed. Then something else changed. Her phone. She started keeping it with her all the time. Now, I know how that sounds. But it wasn't like before. Before, her phone would be everywhere. On the counter, on the couch. Charging in random places. Now, always within reach. Face down. Screen locked, silent. Even when she went to the bathroom. Even when she stepped outside. Even when she was just moving from one room to another. At first, I noticed it the way you notice anything slightly off. Like a picture frame that's a little crooked. You see it, but you don't fix it, because it doesn't seem worth the effort. But then you keep seeing it, over and over, until it's all you can focus on. One night, we were sitting at the table. Emily had already gone upstairs. Laura's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, just a flick of the eyes. But something in her expression changed. Not panic, not fear, just alert. Like whatever was on that screen mattered more than the moment she was in. You gonna check that? I asked. She flipped the phone over slightly. It's nothing. Then she moved it closer to herself. That's when it hit me. Not fully. Not clearly. Just a quiet thought. Since when does she say it's nothing? I didn't say anything else. I could have. That was the moment. A simple question could have opened everything. Who is it? Why does it matter? What's going on? But I didn't ask. Because once you ask, you can't unhear the answer. So I let it go. Again. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Laura was next to me, phone in her hand, screen lighting up her face in the dark. Typing. Stopping. Typing again. I turned slightly. Still working. I asked. Yeah, she said without looking up. I watched her for a second longer. Then I turned back, closed my eyes, and chose sleep over truth. That was my pattern. Ignore, minimize, move on. Until one night, I didn't have that option anymore. Because she made a mistake. A small one. The kind that doesn't seem like anything at the time, but changes everything. She left her phone on the kitchen table. Unlocked. And this time, I actually looked. Her phone wasn't just on the table. It was unlocked. Screen lit. Conversation open. And for a second, I didn't move. Not because I didn't want to look, but because I knew that if I did, something in my life would split into before and after. There are moments like that. Quiet. Ordinary on the surface. But you feel the weight of them before you act. Like your body understands a consequence before your mind does. I stood there in the kitchen, one hand resting on the back of a chair, staring at that screen like it might disappear if I waited long enough. Upstairs, I could hear the shower running. Laura. She must have just stepped away for a minute. That's all it takes. A minute. That's how fragile normal really is. I told myself not to look. I actually did. It's private. You don't need to go there. This is how you break trust. Funny, right? Worried about breaking trust when something in me already knew it had been broken. Slowly, quietly, without a scene, the phone buzzed again, and the message appeared. Right there. No effort required. I miss you already. My chest tightened. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't need to. The words were enough. Simple. Clear. Not something you send to a coworker about deadlines. I felt heat rise in my face. Then cold. Then nothing. That weird emotional vacuum where your brain starts trying to protect you from what you're seeing. Maybe it's not what it looks like. That's the first lie. Always the first one. I leaned closer. Just enough to see more of the conversation. Scrolling would have been a choice. Seeing what was already there felt like an accident. That's how I justified it. The messages above it were worse. Not explicit. Not dramatic. But intimate in a way that didn't belong to me anymore. I wish you were here tonight. It's easier when I'm with you. He doesn't notice anything. That last one. That's the one that actually hit. Not because of what she was doing, but because of what she believed. He doesn't notice anything. And the worst part? She wasn't wrong. I felt something twist in my chest. Not just anger. Something deeper. Embarrassment. Like I'd been the only one in the room who didn't understand what was happening. I heard the shower turn off. Water stopping. Reality rushing back in. I stepped away from the table immediately. Too fast. Like I'd touched something I wasn't supposed to. I walked to the sink. Turned it on, didn't even know why. Just needed noise. Movement. Something normal. The phone buzzed again. I didn't look this time. I couldn't. Footsteps upstairs. Then closer. Then behind me. You're still up. Her voice. Calm. Unaware. I turned. Yeah, I said. I don't know how I sounded. I've replayed that moment 100 times. Trying to hear it from her side. Did I sound different? Did she feel it? Or was I already that easy to read, and she just didn't care anymore? She walked past me, picked up her phone, and I watched her face. That's the thing nobody tells you. You don't just look for evidence. You look for reactions. Tiny ones. Micro expressions that confirm what you already know. She glanced at the screen, paused, just for a fraction of a second, then locked it, put face down. You coming to bed? She asked. Like nothing had happened. Like the air hadn't changed. Like I hadn't just seen something that didn't belong in our life. Yeah, I said, because I still wasn't ready to say it out loud. We went upstairs, got into bed. Same routine, same positions, different reality. She turned off the light. Good night, she said. Good night. And then silence. But not the comfortable kind. This one had weight. I stared into the dark, my mind replaying those messages over and over. Not just the words, the tone, the familiarity, the ease. That's what hurt the most. It didn't look new. It looked established, like something that had been building for a while. And I had been completely outside of it. I turned slightly. She was on her side, facing away, phone in her hand again, screen dimly lighting the blanket. Typing, stopping, typing, same as every other night. Except now I knew, or at least, I thought I did. And here's the part one hate admitting. I didn't say anything. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even the day after. Because once you say it, you have to deal with what comes next. And I wasn't ready. So I did what I've been doing for months. I pretended. Morning came. Coffee, breakfast, routine. Emily talking about school, Laura nodding. Me watching everything like it was happening through glass. Detached. Observing. Trying to match what I saw with what I now knew. Every time her phone buzzed, I noticed. Every time she picked it up, I noticed. Every time she stepped out of the room, I noticed. And suddenly, everything looked different. That's the thing about discovery. It doesn't just reveal something new. It rewrites everything that came before it. All those late nights, all those short answers, all those I'm busy. They weren't just random anymore. They were part of something. Something I had missed, or ignored, or chosen not to see. By the third day, it started eating at me. Not just the situation, but myself. How long has this been happening? Who is he? Why didn't I see it? Did I make this happen? That last one sticks. Because when something breaks quietly, you can't point to one moment. You start looking at yourself, at every small decision, every missed conversation, every later, and you wonder if this is where all of that leads. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. We were in the living room, Emily upstairs, TV on, nobody watching, Laura scrolling, same as always, except nothing was the same anymore. I saw your messages. I didn't raise my voice, didn't build up to it, just dropped it into the room. Flat, heavy, final. She froze. Not dramatically, just still, like her body needed a second to catch up. What, she said. Not confused, just buying time. On your phone, I said. The other night. In the kitchen. Silence. A long one. She put the phone down slowly. Face down. Of course. You went through my phone? That question. Always that question. I shook my head. It was open. Another pause. Different this time. More calculated. What did you see? Not denial. Not confusion. Just control. That's when I knew. For sure. I saw enough, I said. Her eyes dropped for a second, then back to me. And for the first time, there was something there I hadn't seen before. Not guilt. Not exactly. Something closer to acceptance. Like she had been expecting this moment. Just didn't know when it would come. It's not what you think, she said. There it is again. Same line. Different story. Then what is it? I asked. She took a breath. Long. Slow. Like she was choosing her next words carefully. And that's when I realized something that hit harder than the messages. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't scrambling. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. And that's when it got worse. Because whatever this was, it didn't start recently. It had already settled into something real. I was going to tell you, she said. I almost laughed. Really? Yes. When? She didn't answer right away. And that silence was louder than anything she could have said. I leaned back slightly. Nodded. Yeah. I said quietly. That's what I thought. She looked at me. Really looked this time. And for a second, I saw something crack. Not in her. In me. Because I realized this wasn't just about what she did. It was about what we had become. And I didn't know if I was more angry at her, or at myself for not seeing it sooner. So who is he? I asked. She hesitated. Just enough. And in that hesitation, I understood something else. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a decision. "I'll tell you," she said. And the way she said it made my stomach drop, because it didn't sound like the truth was going to fix anything. It sounded like it was about to make everything worse. "I'll tell you," she said. And then she didn't. Not right away. She just sat there across from me in the dim light of the living room, hands folded too neatly in her lap, like if she kept her body still enough, maybe the rest of the night wouldn't fall apart. The TV was still on. Some home renovation show with the volume low at a couple arguing over kitchen cabinets while my marriage was coming apart 10 feet away. I remember that part because it felt insulting. How ordinary the room still looked. "Who is he?" I asked again. Laura swallowed. "It's not." I held up a hand. "Don't do that. Don't start with 'it's not what you think' again. Just answer me." She looked toward the stairs. Emily was upstairs, door closed, probably reading, maybe half asleep, completely unaware that the version of our family she went to bed with was already gone. Laura lowered her voice. "His name is Ben. Just a name, point one syllable." And somehow that made it worse. Because now he was real. Not a faceless threat. Not an abstract betrayal that a person with a name that had already been living in my house without me knowing it. "How do you know him?" "Through work." "Of course." I nodded slowly. "Remote job. Late nights. Constant messages. Flexible hours." All the pieces I had kept refusing to connect were suddenly sitting in front of me like they'd been obvious all along. "How long?" That was the question that mattered. Not if. Not why. Just, how long have I been the only one not knowing? Laura looked down at her hands. "A few months." I stared at her. "A few months." She didn't correct herself. That's the thing about lies once they start cracking. Even the truth comes out sounding managed. "A few months since what?" I asked. "Since you met him? Since you started talking? Since you started lying to me? Since he started saying he missed you?" Her eyes lifted to mine. "We started talking in the spring." Spring. I actually looked at the window then, like the season itself had just become personal. Spring. Summer. Part of fall that a whole stretch of our life had already been poisoned, and I had been calling it stress. "And what exactly is this?" I asked. "An affair." She flinched slightly. "I never slept with him." That answer came too fast. Too prepared. Not because I thought it was necessarily false, because it told me she'd been deciding for a while what counted and what didn't. I let out a breath through my nose and looked away. "Okay," I said. "So what are we calling it then?" She didn't answer. I nodded once. "Right. Emotional affairs are strange that way. Nobody knows what to call them when they're in them. They sound smaller than they are, safer, less criminal. But there's nothing small about finding out your wife has been giving the most intimate parts of herself to someone else while still setting your plate at dinner." "What did you tell him about me?" I asked. That one landed. Her face changed. Not dramatically, just enough. "Laura." She shook her head faintly. "I wasn't trashing you, if that's what you mean." "If that's what I mean." I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. I saw one message, and in that one message he already knew I don't notice anything. "So yeah, I'd say that's kind of what I mean." Her voice dropped even lower. "I said things when I was upset. That's convenient. You want honesty?" She snapped, and now there was heat, finally. "Fine." I talked to him because he listened to me. The room went still. That sentence should have made me angry, and it did. But underneath the anger was something much worse. Recognition. Because I knew exactly why that line hurt so much. It was probably true. Still, I wasn't ready to give her that. "So this is my fault." I didn't say that. "You didn't have to." "No," she said, voice shaking now. "You just want this to be simple. You want me to be the villain so you don't have to look at anything else." I stood up then. Not to intimidate her, I just couldn't stay seated anymore. I don't know why my body felt too full. Of adrenaline, of shame, of the stupid, late-arriving clarity of a man who finally understands what he's been standing in. "Anything else?" I said. "You want me to look at anything else right now?" She stood too. "Yes," she said. "Us." That word nearly broke me. Because us was exactly what I thought I'd been protecting all this time. Working, enduring, keeping the lights on, staying practical. All the things men like me hide behind when we don't know how to be emotionally present. "There hasn't been an us in this house for a long time," she said. I stared at her. "And whose choice was that?" She laughed then, but it was a tired, wounded sound. "You really still don't get it." No, explain it to me, I said. Please. Explain to me how I'm the one standing here listening to my wife admit she's been emotionally involved with another man, and somehow I'm still the one who doesn't get it. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. Because by the time I started talking to him, she said, I had already spent months trying to talk to you. I want to interrupt, defend, correct the record, list all the times I've been home, all the meals eaten at the same table, all the little ways I'd shown up materially if not emotionally. But even in that moment, a few things came back to me too, clearly. Her saying, you've been somewhere else lately. Her asking if I could be present more. Her trying, in those quiet, low-stakes ways wives try before they stop trying. And me, shrugging, deflecting, saying I'm tired, saying work is crazy, saying we'll talk later. Later. That word should be engraved on the grave of half the marriages in this country. Upstairs, I heard a floorboard creak. Both of us froze. Emily. That immediate parental instinct cut through everything. Keep your voice down, Laura whispered. I looked toward the stairs and lowered mine. That's what you're worried about right now. No, she said. I'm worried about all of it. I ran both hands over my face. I was exhausted, furious, humiliated. But above all that, there was one thought that kept pulsing under everything else. How far did this go? Not physically, not even emotionally, logistically. Plans. Intentions. Futures. Are you leaving? I asked. It was the first truly honest question I'd asked all night. Laura didn't answer quickly enough, and that told me more than anything else had. You thought about it, I said. She shut her eyes for a second. Opened them. Yes. There it was. Not I don't know. Not I was confused. Not I would never. Yes. I sat back down because my legs suddenly felt unsteady. Wow, I said quietly. She remained standing for another second, then sat too, but on the opposite end of the couch now, like the physical distance finally matched what had already existed between us. I never planned to just disappear, she said. I almost smiled at that. What a ridiculous mercy to offer. Good to know. I'm serious. So am I. Silence again. The TV flashed changing colors across the walls, a blue kitchen, a white hallway. Some smiling contractor explaining open shelving while my daughter slept upstairs under the roof of a family that might not make it to Christmas. Did you love him? I asked. That question came out more quietly than I expected. Laura looked at me for a long time before answering. I loved who I was when I talked to him. That might have been the cruelest truth of the night. Not because it meant she loved him more than me. Because it meant somewhere along the line, life with me had made her feel like less of herself. I stared at the carpet. A thread near the coffee table had come loose months ago that I'd noticed it. Meant to fix it, forgot. Funny what your brain picks in moments like that. He made me feel seen, she said. I laughed softly, hollow and tired. There it is. I'm not saying it to hurt you. Then why say it? Because it's true. Another one of those clean, unbearable facts. I nodded slowly. And then I asked the question I probably should have asked years earlier, before there was another man, before there were secret messages, before the house developed that quiet emotional draft I kept pretending not to feel. When did you stop loving me? She looked stunned for a second, then sad. I don't know if I did, she said. That answer hit harder than yes would have. Because love wasn't the issue. Not exactly. Neglect can live right next to love for a long time. Oh, can resentment. Oh, can loneliness. The opposite of love isn't always hate. Sometimes it's just emotional abandonment with good intentions. I think I got lonely with you, she said. That sentence found every weak point in me. I wanted to reject it. Tell her she had no right to say that after what she'd done. Tell her loneliness didn't excuse betrayal. Tell her there were 100 better choices than this one. And all of that would have been true. But none of it would have erased the other truth sitting right beside it. I had been lonely too. I just buried mine in work, routine, screens, fatigue. She buried hers in someone who answered. We sat there for a while without speaking. Finally I asked, does he think you're leaving me? Laura hesitated, then nodded once. Of course he did. Because people don't say I miss you already unless they think there's a next chapter available. I stood up again, slower this time. Is he waiting for you? I asked. No. But she said it in the way people answer when they know the technical truth matters less than the real one. Would you have gone? Her eyes met mine. And in that pause, I saw the whole thing. Not certainty, Not even a plan. Just possibility. And sometimes possibility is enough to destroy a marriage. Before she could answer, we both heard movement on the stairs. Emily. She appeared halfway down, hair messy, blanket around her shoulders, blinking in the low light. "Mom," she said, then looked at me. "Dad." No child should ever see their parents' faces in the first 5 seconds after the truth comes out. Kids know. Even before words, they know. Laura stood up immediately. "Honey, why are you awake?" Emily looked between us, fear starting to move across her face. "Why are you both down here?" Neither of us answered fast enough. That was answer enough. She stepped down one more stair. "Are you fighting?" Laura's voice broke on the first word. "No, sweetheart, we're just—" "Don't lie to her," I said quietly. Laura looked at me like I'd slapped her. Emily's eyes widened. I took a breath, forced my voice steady. "Go back upstairs for a minute." She didn't move. And then, in the smallest voice I've ever heard from my daughter, she asked the question that made the whole night stop being about me, or Laura, or Ben, or blame. "Are we okay?" "We. Not you two. Not what happened. Are we okay?" That's when the real damage became visible. Not in the messages. Not in the confession. In the face of a child who suddenly understood the ground under her life might not be solid. Laura started crying then. Quietly point one hand over her mouth. I couldn't speak for a second. Because the honest answer was, I didn't know. And that terrified me. So I walked to the stairs, crouched slightly so I was closer to Emily's level, and said the only true thing I had left. "We love you," I said. "None of this changes that." She stared at me, then at her mother, then back at me, and I saw it. The moment childhood shifts, not gone, but dented. She nodded once and turned around, going back upstairs slower than she'd come down. Laura sat back on the couch and cried into both hands. I didn't go to her. Maybe I should have, maybe not. But I understood something then with a clarity that still makes me sick. The discovery wasn't the phone. The twist wasn't the other man. The worst part was realizing this had been dying in pieces for so long that by the time I finally looked directly at it, my daughter could already feel it too. If you're listening to this and your relationship feels off, not dramatic, not explosive, just quietly wrong, don't wait for proof. Don't wait for a name and a phone. Don't wait for your kid to ask if the family is okay. Most people think marriages end in one night. They don't. They end in postponed conversations that I end tiny rejections that I end choosing comfort over honesty until someone else gets invited into the silence. I thought betrayal would sound loud. It didn't. It sounded like routine, like I'm tired, like maybe later, like a wife laughing at messages in another room because her husband stopped being the place she brought herself to. And by the time I finally asked the right questions, the answers weren't the only thing I had to fear anymore.